Tonight we dive not into the chaos of war, or the drama of a crumbling empire, but into the quiet, steady hum of a life well lived in a world you think you know. You find yourself in the humid, fragrant air of a Maya city, not as a conquering hero or a sacrificed captive, but as a child, 8 reigns old, staring into the terrifying, beautiful maw of a cenote. The water is a deep, impossible blue, a tear in the green skin of the world, and the shadows clinging to the limestone walls seem to breathe. The scent of wet stone and the distant, sweet perfume of plumeria do little to calm the frantic beat of your heart. You're supposed to be brave, you are of the royal line, after all. But right now, all you feel is a primal, gut-churning fear. One misstep on the slick stone, one moment of lost balance, and you'll join the bones that are said to litter the caverns below. You probably won't survive this. The Maya world is not a theme park, it's a place of sharp obsidian, jaguars in the dark, and sacred pools that swallow the unprepared. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your small hand is slick with sweat in your father's firm grip. His presence is a mountain beside you, a bastion of calm. He is the Ajaw, the holy lord of 9 Mutal Ajaw, a city of modest power nestled in the lush, contested foothills. You are not his eldest, not the immediate heir, and in this moment, you are profoundly grateful for that obscurity. This ceremony, the Hetzmek, is a naming ritual, a presentation to the gods, and for you, it involves being led to the very edge of this sacred well. The Chark live here, your father murmurs, his voice a low rumble that seems to commune with the chasm itself. They give us the rain. And sometimes, they give visions. The priest, adorned in a headdress of quetzal feathers that shiver in the damp breeze, chants in the archaic, poetic language of the ancestors. You catch words for water, sky, and seeing. He anoints your forehead with a sticky, pungent balm of copal resin and ground jade. The smell is sharp, sacred, and entirely alien. You're then handed a small, perfectly carved jade bead, effigy of the water lily jaguar, a creature of both the deep and the night. Your instruction is simple, terrifying: drop it as an offering. Don't look down. Look across. You lean forward, your toes curling over the precipice. Your arm extends, the green bead pinched between your thumb and forefinger. For a heartbeat, you defy the order. You glance down. The water is so far below, a dark mirror reflecting a sliver of the sky. Dizziness washes over you. But then you remember. Look across. You lift your gaze, over the gap, to the other side of the cenote. There, in a shaft of sunlight that cuts through the dense canopy, a hummingbird is suspended, its throat a flash of impossible, fiery red. It hovers, watching you, its wings a blur, and in that suspended moment, the fear vanishes. It is replaced by a profound, inexplicable calm. The world narrows to you, the bird, the water, the stone. A connection, silent and deep, threads through it all. You let the bead fall. You don't hear it hit the water. The priest gasps, a sharp intake of breath. Your father's grip on your shoulder tightens, but it's no longer restraint, it's affirmation. They saw it too. The hummingbird, the TZ Union, is a messenger, a symbol of the spirit world and of the very essence of life. Your child's mind doesn't understand the political ramifications, the way this single moment will forever shape your path. You just know you are no longer afraid of the deep, dark water. Historians still argue whether these cenote rituals were primarily for the elite or involved wider community participation, a debate fueled by the precious objects found in some and the lack of them in others. As you are led away, the image of that hummingbird is seared into your memory, a quiet, personal truth in a world that will soon demand public, grander ones. The mainstream historical fact here is the Hetzmek ceremony itself, a documented Maya rite of passage. The specific, personal animal omens, like your hummingbird, while central to an individual's life story, were rarely the kind of thing carved in stone for the ages. Your reign, you will one day decide, will be built on such quiet, personal truths, not just grand pronouncements. For now, you are just a boy who faced the abyss and found a friend in a flicker of iridescent feathers. The calm from the cenote lingers for about a day, a soft, personal glow that is quickly smothered by the rigid expectations of the stone and plaster world you return to. The air's burden isn't a metaphorical concept, it's a daily, grinding schedule administered by a series of stone-faced tutors who seem to be carved from the same limestone as the temples. Your carefree days of chasing iguanas through the palace courtyards are over. Your older brother, the actual heir, is a serious boy of 14 reigns, already learning the arts of warfare and interstate diplomacy. You, the second son, are now on a different, unexpectedly accelerated track. The hummingbird vision has marked you, and in the intricate spiritual politics of your world, a marked child is a valuable asset, a potential future oracle or high priest. So, your education becomes a strange, dual-headed beast, part courtly administrator, part holy seer. Your mornings now belong to the scribe, a man named Siachik who smells of ink and intellectual superiority. You sit cross-legged on a mat, a bark paper codex open before you, learning the elegant, maddeningly complex glyphs of your language. Your wrist aches from practicing the loops and squares, the animal heads and celestial symbols. This, Siachik says, tapping a glyph with a bony finger, is not just a word for Lord. It is the concept of authority, the weight of command. Draw it poorly, and you insult the very idea. He teaches you the long count, the vast, cyclical calendar that maps the journeys of the gods. You learn to calculate the Ka-ton, the 20-year period that structures your people's history. It's a dizzying concept for a child, this scale of time, and it makes your own small life feel both insignificant and critically important, a single thread in a grand, preordained tapestry. The mainstream historical fact here is the Maya writing system, one of the most complex and sophisticated scripts ever developed, containing both logographic and syllabic elements. Your afternoons are for the priest, a man named Balaam whose eyes seem to see into other worlds. He is less concerned with your penmanship and more with your dreams. He teaches you the bloodletting rituals, not the act itself yet, but the theology behind it. The gods gave us life, Balaam intones, his voice a low hum. They gave us Ixim, maize. This created a debt. A sacred debt that must be repaid with the most precious substance we possess, Kaikel, the life force in our blood. He shows you the obsidian lancets, the stingray spines, the paper strips to collect the blood for burning. It is frightening, but he presents it not as violence, but as the highest form of conversation with the divine. The most potent blood for these rituals was believed to come from the tongue and the earlobes, as they were seen as conduits of speech and hearing, of receiving and transmitting sacred knowledge. The physical training is the worst. You run along the Sakbi, the white plaster causeways that arrow through the jungle. You learn to handle a spear, not to become a great warrior, but to understand the warrior's mindset, to know the tools of the power you may one day wield. Your body is constantly sore, your mind is perpetually full, and the memory of the hummingbird feels like a dream from another lifetime. Historians still argue whether this rigorous education was reserved solely for the highest nobility or if gifted children from lesser lineages could sometimes be included, a debate that hinges on ambiguous glyphic references to schools within palace complexes. The pressure is a constant, low-grade fever. One evening, exhausted after a failed attempt to correctly recite the 20-day names of the calendar, you confide in your mother. She is a woman from a lesser noble family, known for her skill in weaving and her quiet wisdom. She doesn't offer platitudes. Instead, she says, the burden is heavy because it is meant to be carried. A feather is not asked to bear the weight of a stone. You were not given the vision of the Tzedunun because you were weak. You were given it because you were strong enough to see it. It's the first time anyone has framed it that way. You are not being crushed by the expectations, you are being sculpted by them. The soreness in your muscles, the ache in your writing hand, the dizzying theological concepts, they are the chisel and the stone. And somewhere deep inside, the boy who stood at the edge of the abyss begins to straighten his back. The sculpting ends abruptly with the coughing sickness. It sweeps through 9 Mutal Ajaw not with the dramatic fury of a hurricane, but with a quiet, insidious persistence, a wet, rattling sound that echoes through the palace corridors at night. Your father, the Ajaw, the mountain of a man who held your hand at the cenote, succumbs to it in a matter of days. The city holds its breath. The rituals are performed, the blood offerings are made to the gods of healing, but the cosmic balance has been tipped. Your older brother, the serious heir of 14 reigns, ascends the carved wooden throne in the main plaza, his slight frame looking almost comical amidst the jaguar pelts and jade ornaments of lordship. His reign lasts for 6 moons. 6 moons of watching him try to fill a space far too large for him, his voice still cracking when he gives orders to men 3 times his age. Then the coughing finds him, too, and the mountain, and its successor, are both gone. The silence that follows is heavier than any chant, any drumbeat. It's a silence filled with the unblinking gaze of the city's elders, a council of skeptics now turning their attention to you. You are 12 reigns old. The boy with the hummingbird vision is now the last viable male of the main royal line. The council chamber is a dark, smoky room, the air thick with the smell of copal and old ambition. The faces that surround you are a map of the city's power structure. The grizzled war captain, Chakek, his face a web of scars owned in forgotten skirmishes. The high priest, Balaam, your old tutor, his expression inscrutable. The head scribe, Siachik, looking at you as if you were a poorly drawn glyph. And the most powerful of them all, the Lacam, the standard bearer and chief tax collector. A shrewd man named Carwil whose jade necklaces could probably feed a commoner's family for a lifetime. The boy saw the Tzedunun, Balaam states, his voice cutting through the tension. The omen was witnessed. It suggests divine favor. Divine favor does not balance ledgers, Carwil counters, not even looking at you. Nor does it deter the ambitions of Khan, our neighbors to the east. They watch us now, like a jaguar watches a wounded peccary. A child on the throne is an invitation. Chakek grunts in agreement. The warriors need a strong hand. They need to see a leader who can lead them to battle, not one who needs a stool to see over the war council table. This is your first test, a trial by verbal combat, and you are utterly unprepared. You feel small, the intricate patterns on the wall tapestries seeming to swim before your eyes. They debate you as if you are not there, a problem to be solved. The idea of a regency is proposed, with Carwil, of course, acting as the power behind the throne until you come of age. It sounds reasonable. It is also, you sense with a sudden, cold clarity, a death sentence for your lineage. You would be a puppet, and puppets are eventually stored away in dark chests. You remember your mother's words about the burden. You remember the hummingbird, not the fear. And in a moment of pure, desperate instinct, you do the one thing they do not expect. You speak. Your voice is higher than you'd like, but it doesn't crack. The Chark in the cenote did not speak to a regent. You say, looking not at Carwil, but at Balaam, the priest. They showed the vision to me. You pause, letting the weight of the sacred memory fill the room. And the first lesson my father taught me was that an Ajaw listens to his counsel, but he must see for himself. You are paraphrasing, twisting a memory into a weapon. You are invoking the spiritual capital of your vision and the temporal authority of your father in a single, shaky sentence. The room goes still. Kawala's eyes narrow, finally focusing on you. Balaam's lips curve into the faintest hint of a smile. You have, in one stroke, acknowledged their counsel while asserting your own unique, divinely sanctioned right to rule. It's a precarious gamble. Historians still argue whether child rulers in Maya society were ever true sovereigns or always mere figureheads for powerful factions, a debate that turns on interpreting the glyphs describing their reigns. The mainstream historical fact is the existence of these powerful councils, often composed of high-ranking nobles and priests, who could make or break a ruler. Carwyll, for all his bluster, was secretly terrified of bats, a fact you will never use against him but will always privately cherish. The war captain, Chakek, lets out a short, sharp laugh. The peccary has teeth, he says. It is not an endorsement, but it is a concession. The regency proposal is tabled. You are not a king, not yet. But you are no longer just a boy. You are the Ajaw, and the burden is now officially, terrifyingly, yours. The burden, you quickly learn, is less a single heavy weight and more 1,000 small cords, each pulling you in a different direction. For the next 4 years, you are a student ruler, your authority a carefully negotiated fiction. Carwyll manages the treasury, Chakek the warriors, and Balaam the gods. Your role is to sit, to listen, and to learn the intricate dance of power. You preside over ceremonies, a living symbol draped in jade, your face a placid mask while beneath it, you absorb everything. The subtle slight in a rival noble's greeting, the way a merchant's eyes shift when discussing tribute from the coast, the specific cadence of a lie. You are playing a long game, and the board is being set for a move no one expects. The opportunity arrives not with a declaration of war, but with an invitation to the ball game. The ruler of the nearby, and perpetually arrogant, city-state of Khan is celebrating the completion of a new ball court. It's a political theater, a display of wealth and power disguised as sport. The Pits game is a sacred reenactment of cosmic struggle, where two teams battle to propel a solid rubber ball through a stone ring high on a wall, using only their hips, knees, and elbows. The ball represents the sun, the court the world, the ring a portal to the other world. Defeat is humiliation, victory is divine favor. Sometimes, though rarely in your more civilized age, the captain of the losing team is sacrificed, his blood a final offering to complete the cosmic cycle. Your council is divided. Chakek wants to send a team of his most hardened veterans, to show Khan our military might. Carwyll advises sending a token team and a lavish gift, a strategy of appeasement. Balaam suggests a team of priests, to emphasize our spiritual superiority. You listen to them all, your fingers tracing the glyph for opportunity on the edge of your writing board. You've been watching the boys who play in the informal court on the city's outskirts, the commoners who play not for ritual but for the sheer, joyous love of the game. There is one, a lanky, impossibly agile youth named Akbal, who moves with an instinctual grace your stiff, regimented warriors lack. We will send a team, you announce, your voice now deeper, carrying an authority that is no longer just borrowed. But not the warriors' team. Not the priest's team. We will send my team. The silence that follows is profound. You have just pulled on one of the most important chords of power, the one controlling public spectacle. You spend the next moons secretly training with Akbal and his friends. You don't train them in ritual, you train them in strategy. You notice that everyone focuses on the ball. You teach your team to focus on the opponents, to anticipate their movements, to use the court's geometry itself as a weapon. It's a heretical approach, treating the sacred contest like a game of tactical intellect. The mainstream historical fact here is the profound religious and political significance of the Maya ball game, a cornerstone of Mesoamerican culture for millennia. The day of the game arrives. The ball court of Khan is immense, its sloping walls towering over a packed, noisy crowd. The scent of roasted squash seeds and sweat fills the air. The Khan team is magnificent, their padded belts and helmets gleaming, their bodies thick with ritual muscle. Your team looks like boys from the outskirts. The crowd from Khan laughs. Your own nobles look mortified. But when the heavy, 6-pound rubber ball is served, something shifts. Ajaw and his friends are a whirlwind. They don't just hit the ball, they orchestrate its movement. They use deft, subtle blocks. They pass in patterns the Khan team has never seen. They are playing a different game entirely. One your trainer told you is that the rubber for these balls, harvested from the latex of the castilla tree, was sometimes mixed with the roots of the moonflower vine, a substance believed to give the ball a life of its own, a mischievous spirit that could confound players. Watching the Khan team stumble, you wonder if there's some truth to it. The score is a stalemate for what feels like an eternity. Bruises bloom on your players' hips like dark flowers. The crowd's laughter has turned to anxious murmurs. Then, the moment comes. Ajaw feints left, drawing 2 defenders, and with a powerful, twisting motion of his hip, he sends the ball arcing not towards the ring, but high off the angled side wall. It's a miscalculation, the crowd gasps, but it's your calculation. The ball caroms at a sharp angle, shooting across the court where your smallest player, waiting unseen, meets it with his knee. The thud echoes in the sudden silence. The ball sails cleanly through the stone ring. A perfect, impossible shot. The silence holds for a heartbeat, then erupts. You have not just won, you have redefined the game on their turf. Historians still argue whether the scoring of a goal through the ring always ended the game or if play could continue, a debate fueled by conflicting depictions in art and glyphic accounts. In this case, it ends it. The ruler of Khan, forced to acknowledge the divine favor shown to you, presents you with the victor's prize, a magnificent Quetzal feather headdress. But the real prize is the look on Kawales and Chakek's faces as you return. It is no longer the look one gives a boy. It is the look one gives a player. The ball game gambit has worked. You have just scored your first major political victory, and you did it not with a spear, but with a hip check. The victory at Khan tastes sweet, like the first ripe zapote of the season, but its aftertaste is the bitter tang of reality. You return to 9 Mutal Ajaw not to universal acclaim, but to a quiet, simmering crisis. The late rains have been hesitant. The downpours that should have turned the causeways to rivers and filled the reservoirs are little more than a persistent, mocking drizzle. The maize in the outlying fields, the lifeblood of your city, is stunted, its leaves curling in protest. The commoners, the Yalba Winnick, who cheered your ball game triumph, now look to the sky with anxious eyes. Your council is preoccupied with the tribute of jade and Quetzal feathers from Khan, but you walk the fields with your steward, the rich, dark earth turning to dust between your fingers. This is the test your vision at the cenote was for, you realize. Not for winning games, but for weathering storms. It is in this atmosphere of creeping dread that the stingless bee prophet appears. His name is Mo, and he is an old, stooped honeykeeper who tends the hollowed logs of the docile, stingless Melipona bees on the sun-dappled edge of the jungle. He is not a priest, not a noble, and he certainly doesn't smell of copal and authority. He smells of smoke, honey, and damp earth. He requests an audience, and against the muttered objections of your guards, you grant it, meeting him not in the stifling council chamber, but in the palace gardens. He doesn't bow. His eyes, milky with age, seem to look through you. They are restless, Lord, he says, his voice a dry rustle. The little mothers. They fly in circles. They do not go to the flowers. They know the Chark are not listening. You've heard the official reports from Balaam. The bloodletting ceremonies have been performed with extra fervor. The correct chants have been sung. The gods, according to priestly doctrine, should be satisfied. But the sky remains a hard, brassy bowl. Mo the honeykeeper is suggesting something different, something almost heretical, that the gods are not angry, they are absent, or not listening to the usual pleas. He tells you a story, a piece of folklore your tutors would have dismissed as peasant superstition. He says that when the world was new, the stingless bee was the one who carried the whispers of the people directly to the gods, bypassing the grand temples and the bloody altars, because her honey was the purest form of sweet speech. The Chark are vain, Mo whispers. They have been given only blood and tears for too long. They have forgotten the taste of sweetness. They have forgotten the sound of a humble thanks. The idea is a quiet explosion in your mind. It aligns with nothing in your formal education, yet it feels truer than any complex theological argument Balaam has ever presented. It feels like the hummingbird, a simple, direct connection. You dismiss the old man with a pouch of cocoa beans, your mind racing. That night, you issue your first major decree as a ruler acting on his own intuition, without consulting the council. It is a radical, almost foolish order. You command that every family in 9 Nuttall Ajaw, from the highest noble to the lowest farmer, set aside a portion of whatever honey they have, even if it is just a thimbleful, and bring it to the main plaza at sunset. There will be no grand bloodletting. There will be a burning of honey. The reaction is predictable chaos. Carwell is apoplectic, sputtering about the disruption to the market and the absurdity of the gesture. Balaam is deeply offended, his entire priestly apparatus rendered momentarily obsolete. But you stand firm, the memory of the restless bees and the old man's milky eyes giving you a conviction that feels like stone. The mainstream historical fact here is the central role of bloodletting as the primary means of communicating with and repaying the gods. Your decree flies in the face of centuries of orthodoxy. As the sun dips below the temple tops, a strange thing happens. The people come. Hesitantly at first, then in a steady stream. They bring clay pots, gourd bowls, leaf wraps. The air, usually thick with the smell of burning copal and blood, becomes thick with the cloying, floral, miraculous scent of honey. You stand before the central shrine, and with a prayer you compose yourself, a simple, direct request for rain, a thanks for the sweetness of life. You pour the first great jar of honey onto the roaring fire. It doesn't sizzle and smoke like blood. It flares, a great, golden, fragrant flame that licks the darkening sky. The crowd gasps. For a moment, the entire city smells like a flower. Melipona bee honey has unique spiritual properties according to local folklore, believed to be a direct conduit to the more benevolent, agricultural deities because the bees themselves are peaceful and productive. You wait. Nothing happens. The stars come out, the fire dies down to embers. A wave of disappointment begins to ripple through the crowd. Carwell shoots you a look that says, "I told you so." And then, a single, fat, warm drop of water lands on your forehead. Then another. And then the sky, which has held its breath for so long, simply breaks. The rain doesn't just fall, it cascades, a roaring, drenching, life-giving deluge. The people don't run for cover. They stand in the plaza, faces upturned, laughing and crying in the downpour. You don't move either. The stingless bee prophet was right. You offered sweetness, and the vain, forgetful gods remembered their duty. Historians still argue whether major climatic events like droughts were truly interpreted as divine displeasure or if the Maya had a more nuanced, practical understanding of weather patterns. But in that moment, for you and your people, it was a miracle. And it was a miracle you orchestrated not through priestly ritual, but by listening to a whisper from the jungle. Your authority, forged in the ball court, is now cemented in the rain-swept plaza. The rain changes everything. It soaks into the parched earth, it fills the reservoirs, and it washes away the last vestiges of the council's condescension. You are no longer the boy Ajaw. You are the ruler who spoke to the gods in a language of honey and was answered with a deluge. For a few years, there is a kind of golden peace. The maize grows tall, the tribute flows in steadily, and the city hums with a contented prosperity. You learn the daily rhythms of kingship, settling disputes between farmers over a stolen turkey, approving the designs for a new residential compound, reviewing the glyphic accounts of Carwill, whose respect for you is now grudging but genuine. It is during this period of calm that the question of your marriage, long dormant, rises to the surface with the inevitable force of a sprouting seed. A strategic union is, of course, the primary consideration. Your city is stable, but isolation is a vulnerability. Alliances are the mortar that binds the scattered city-states of the world together, and marriage is the strongest kind. Envoys arrive with painted codices and polished speeches, extolling the virtues of princesses from half a dozen rival and friendly cities. There are talks with the powerful snake kingdom of Canule, a prospect that makes Chakek salivate with martial anticipation. There are offers from wealthy coastal cities whose traders bring spondylus shell and salted fish. But it is a proposal from the smaller, inland city of Sal that catches your attention, presented not with grand boasts, but with a simple, elegant jade necklace. The bride price of jade is not exorbitant, but it is perfect. The plaque is carved with the image of Itzamnaj, the creator god, but in a rare, gentle form, teaching the arts of writing to a hummingbird. The message is subtle, intelligent, and feels meant for you. Her name is Sak Bian. She is the second daughter of the Ajaw of Sal, a city known more for its master stoneworkers and shrewd diplomats than its warriors. The alliance is a practical one, creating a buffer between you and more aggressive neighbors. But when her procession arrives, you see her for the first time as she descends from her litter, and practicality takes a blow to the heart. She is not draped in the gaudy, clattering wealth of a Canule princess. She wears a simple white huipal dress, embroidered with subtle, grey thread patterns of falling water, and her dark hair is bound with a single, perfect flower. Her eyes are not downcast, they meet yours with a calm, appraising intelligence. There is no shy smile, only a quiet, composed curiosity. This is not a girl who has been taught only to be ornamental. The wedding ceremonies are a week-long blur of rituals, feasts, and bloodletting. You stand beside her, your shoulders touching, as Balaam sanctifies the union. You spill your blood together onto bark paper, the drops mingling before they are burned, sending your shade commitment into the smoke-filled sky. The mainstream historical fact here is the deeply political nature of royal marriages among the Maya elite, used to cement military alliances, secure trade routes, and consolidate power between city-states. It is a transaction, and you are both its key pieces. But later, in the relative privacy of your newly prepared quarters, the public facade falls away. The air is thick with the scent of the floral garlands strewn about the room. She is the one who breaks the silence. "They tell me you convinced the gods with honey," she says, her voice softer than it was in public, laced with a hint of amusement. "My father's priests were scandalized." You laugh, a short, surprised sound. "My own priests are still recovering." "Good," she says, a small, genuine smile finally touching her lips. "Priests should be kept on their toes. It prevents dogma." In that moment, you understand that the alliance is not just with Sal, but with her. Sak Bian is sharp, observant, and possesses a political acumen that likely surpasses your own. She insisted on learning to read and write glyphs, a skill usually reserved for male scribes and nobles, by bribing her older brother's tutor with her own store of rare vanilla pots. This marriage, this transaction of jade and political advantage, brings with it a personal conflict you hadn't anticipated. You find yourself wanting to be a husband, not just a strategic partner. You want her counsel, her company, her quiet laugh in the evenings. But you also feel the weight of the city's eyes, the expectation to produce an heir, to maintain a certain royal distance. Historians still argue whether love or affection played any significant role in these politically arranged unions, or if the personal was always subsumed by the dynastic. For you, it becomes a daily negotiation. You find yourself sharing problems with her. Carwell's latest obfuscation about the cocoa bean reserve, Chakek's desire for a new, provocative watchtower on the border. She listens, and her questions are incisive, cutting to the heart of the matter in a way your council members never do. She doesn't give you answers, she gives you perspectives. The jade necklace she brought remains her most prized possession, not for its value, but for its meaning. It was her choice, she tells you one night. Of all the pieces in her father's treasury, she selected that one, with the hummingbird, specifically for you. The alliance is secure. The personal conflict, the struggle to balance the ruler with the man, is just beginning. And for the first time, you are glad you don't have to wage that war alone. Nine Sak Beyond's perspective becomes a new lens through which you see your city, and it reveals flaws you had been trained to overlook. The golden piece, you now understand, is gilded with the quiet discontent of your people. You see it in the way the farmers avert their eyes a little too quickly when you pass, or in the strained silence that falls over the market when your tax collectors make their rounds. The old system, administered with ruthless efficiency by Carwill, is a blunt instrument. It demands tribute in maize, beans, salt, cloth, and labor based on archaic assessments of land and family size. It does not account for a blighted field, a stolen harvest, or a family struck by sickness. The debt simply accumulates, a chain of obligation that can bind a family for generations. The solution comes to you not in a grand vision, but in a moment of domestic frustration. You are trying to compose a new glyphic text to commemorate the building of a new reservoir, struggling to find the right verb to convey community effort. Nine Sak Beyond watches you, a wry smile on her face as she grinds cocoa beans with a stone mano and metate. You are trying to write what you think happened, she says. Perhaps you should first listen to what actually did. The man who mixed the lime plaster for the reservoir wall, he might have a better word for it than you do. The idea is radical, almost laughable. An Ajaw, listening to a plasterer? But the memory of the honey burning, of the power of listening to an unorthodox voice, stirs within you. You decide to create the Codex of Complaints. It is not its official name, of course. Carwill grandly titles it the Scroll of Adjusted Equities. But everyone knows what it is. You commission a new, blank bark paper codex and decree that on every full moon, you will sit in the lesser courtyard, not on your throne, but on a simple bench, with a scribe by your side. Any citizen of 9 Neutral Ajaw may come and state their grievance, their reason for being unable to meet their tribute, or their complaint against a corrupt official. Their words will be recorded. You will listen. The first session is a disaster. No one comes. The people are terrified. To complain is to question the system, and the system has sharp teeth. The second full moon, a single, wizened old woman shuffles forward, her back bent from a lifetime at the loom. She claims the local headman, a cousin of Carwell's, has been taking an extra measure of cloth from every family in her compound as a handling fee. Your scribe records it. You do nothing immediately. The third moon, a farmer comes, his hands clenched into nervous fists. His eldest son, his main laborer, broke his leg falling from a ramon tree. He cannot work his full field. He is falling behind. The scribe records it. You still do nothing publicly, but privately, you have your agents investigate. The old woman's story is true. The headman is replaced, his extortion repaid from his own stores. The farmer's son is visited by one of Balaam's healing priests, and his family's tribute is officially reduced for 2 seasons. The dam breaks after that. The codex of complaints swells. You hear about a dried-up well, a disputed property line, a merchant using falsely weighted stones. The mainstream historical fact here is the complex Maya tax and tribute system, which was the lifeblood of the city-state, supporting the nobility, priesthood, and large-scale projects. Your innovation isn't to abolish it, but to introduce a concept of accountability and flexibility. Carwill is horrified. He argues that you are encouraging laziness, undermining the very principle of obligation. But you see the change in the city's spirit. The averted gazes become respectful nods. The strained silences become murmurs of conversation. The people feel heard. The people began to refer to the codex not by its official name, but as the Lord's ear, and they would say someone had entered the ear with their problem. It is not a perfect system. You hear lies and exaggerations. You spend long nights with 9 Sak Bayan, sifting through the scrolls, trying to discern truth from desperation. Historians still argue whether such bottom-up feedback mechanisms existed in any formal capacity in Maya governance or if rule was always top-down and autocratic. In 9 Mutal Ajaw, under your reign, it exists because you willed it so. You revolutionized tax collection not by changing the rates, but by changing the relationship. The tribute still flows, but now it flows from a place of perceived fairness, not just fear. The chain of obligation remains, but you have shown that its links can be loosened, its weight adjusted. The city, you realize, is not just a collection of resources to be managed, but a body of people to be listened to. And for the first time in a long time, the body is breathing easier. The business of listening, of adjudicating, of ruling, fills your days with a satisfying, granular texture. But it is in the quieter moments, the spaces between your official duties, that you and 9 Sak Bayan build the foundation of your life together. It is during one of these evenings, sitting on a mat in your private courtyard, that you first truly notice the sound of your city. Or rather, the lack of a particular sound. The palace complex is a symphony of noise, the distant clatter of stone workers, the rhythmic grinding of maize from the kitchens, the chatter of attendants, the occasional blast from a conch shell trumpet. But the sound itself is flat. It hits the hard plaster walls and stone floors and dies there, creating a constant, low reverberation that is the aural backdrop of your existence. 9 Sak Bayan remarks on it, her head tilted as she listens. In Sal, she says, my father's palace had niches in the walls, little alcoves. The sound there was softer. It got caught in the pockets. It is a simple observation, but it lodges in your architect's mind, a mind that has been preoccupied with the new reservoir and repairs to the main temple. You think of the cenote, the way sound echoed and traveled in that vast, natural space. You think of the beehives, the structured, resonant cavities of the logs. You become quietly obsessed with the idea of shaping sound itself. You summon the master builder, a man named Armak, whose hands are permanently dusted with limestone. You propose an experiment, not for a grand new pyramid, but for the new residential compound being built for mid-level scribes and artisans. You want him to incorporate what you call whispering walls. The idea is to build double walls in key communal areas, leaving a hand's breadth of empty space between the inner and outer stone and plaster. Within this cavity, you instruct him to place broken pottery sherds, empty snail shells, and other porous, hollow materials. Armak looks at you as if you've suggested building the walls from feathers. Lord, he says, his voice thick with confusion, the goal is to make a wall strong. To keep things out. Or in. You are keeping things out, you explain patiently. You are keeping out the hardness of the sound. The shells, they will swallow the sharpness. It is an intuition, not an engineering principle you can explain. You are, in effect, trying to invent rudimentary acoustic damping. The mainstream historical fact is the Maya mastery of architectural acoustics, particularly in large plazas and temples where sound could be projected over vast distances. The speculative idea that they might have engineered domestic spaces for specific sonic environments, an idea for which there is little archaeological evidence but which is a fun thought experiment. Armak, loyal and now intrigued by the strangeness of the request, agrees to try. The construction begins. The workers, used to hauling solid stone, now carefully stack an inner and outer wall, filling the gap with the strange, rattling collection of sherds and shells you and 9 Sak Bayan have them gather. They think you've gone a little mad. Kawal hears of it and merely shakes his head, muttering about the frivolous use of labor. But when the plaster is applied, sealing the whispering within, the effect in the first finished room is immediate and startling. You step inside. The usual hard echo is gone. The space feels calm. Your voice doesn't bounce, it settles. The sounds from the courtyard outside are muted, softened into a gentle background hum. It feels less like a stone box and more like a space for thought. The scribes who move in are the first to notice the profound benefit. Their work, which requires intense concentration, is no longer constantly fractured by the intrusive clatter of the city. They report sleeping better. The sound of a crying child is dampened, contained. The innovation spreads, first to other new buildings, then as a retrofit to older administrative halls. There is no grand announcement, no stela carved to commemorate the victory over reverberation. But slowly, the very soundscape of 9 Nutal Ajaw changes. The city becomes a little quieter, a little more peaceful. The harsh edges of noise are sanded down. Historians still argue whether such subtle architectural features were intentional or merely a byproduct of construction techniques. But for you, the intent is everything. The whispering walls are a testament to your belief that a ruler's duty is not just to the grand and the visible, but to the subtle textures of daily life, to the very quality of the silence in which your people think, rest, and dream. The peace you have cultivated, both in the spirit of your people and in the very sound of your city, is a delicate ecosystem. It requires constant, careful tending, and its most vital nutrient is not faith or goodwill, but cocoa. The brown beans are more than a luxury. They are the grease in the wheels of trade, the currency of diplomacy, and the lifeblood of your treasury. Your city's groves of cacao trees, nestled in the specially shaded, humid valleys a day's walk from the center, are your most precious resource. And resources, you learn, attract predators. The problem begins subtly. A trade caravan from the powerful city of Motul, a place known for its aggressive merchants and its own inferior, sour-tasting cocoa, arrives with great fanfare. Their chief merchant, a man with a smile as slick as jade polish, offers a deal that seems, on the surface, generous. They wish to become the exclusive distributors of 9 Nutal Ajaw cocoa to the distant, lucrative markets of the highlands. They offer a fixed, high price. It is Kawil, of all people, who smells the trap. They offer a cage gilded with gold, he grumbles, unrolling his accounting scrolls. A fixed price now, when demand is rising. In 5 years, we will be rich, but they will be vastly richer, and we will be dependent on their network. They are not buying our beans, they are buying our future. This is the game you must now play, a game of economic warfare far more complex than any ball game. Motel's proposal is the opening move in an attempt to form a chocolate cartel, with them at the center and you as a captive supplier. Your council is divided. Some see the guaranteed income as stability. But you, 9 Sak Bayan, and a now energized Carwill see the long-term stranglehold. Your countermove is not to refuse, but to redefine the game. You cannot outmuscle Motel, but you can outmaneuver them. Your first move is quality. You summon the master chocolate makers, the ones who know the secret of fermenting the beans just so, of roasting them over a specific type of wood smoke that gives your cocoa its distinctive, faintly floral note. You invest heavily in them, creating a guild with its own standards. Your cocoa, you decree, will now be marked with a special glyph, a hummingbird over a cacao pod, signifying it as the premier grade. It becomes a branded good. Your second move is diversification. You send envoys not to the highlands, but to the coast, to the salt and shell people Motel has ignored. You trade your premier cocoa not for more jade, but for something more valuable, access. You secure exclusive rights for your traders to use their coastal canoe routes, opening up a whole new network that bypasses Motel's land-based control. The mainstream historical fact here is the immense economic importance of cacao in Mesoamerica, used as currency, a ritual beverage, and a major trade commodity, with control over its production and distribution being a primary source of political power. The third move is the most audacious. You begin to stockpile. You use the treasury to buy up the surplus from your own farmers, creating a reserve. When Motel, confident in their impending victory, sends a second delegation to finalize their exclusive deal, you are ready. You listen to their terms with a placid face. Then you counter. You offer them a contract, not for exclusivity, but for a limited amount of your standard grade beans, at a price significantly higher than their fixed offer. For your premier, hummingbird branded beans, you quote a price so high the lead merchant actually chokes on his spiced chocolate drink. Some elite Maya chocolate makers believed the spirit of the cacao tree could be invoked by whispering specific chants during the harvest, ensuring a superior flavor and a more potent ritual essence, a trade secret you are more than happy to let rumors of circulate. The merchants from Motel are flummoxed. They bluster. They threaten to turn to other suppliers. You simply smile and have a servant bring in a frothing cup of your premier chocolate, the aroma alone enough to silence them. They have no other supplier of this quality. And you have just opened your own route to the coast, making their distribution network less crucial. Historians still argue whether such sophisticated economic strategies, resembling modern cartels and branding, were consciously employed by Maya states or if we are projecting our own models onto their actions. But the result is undeniable. The merchants from Motel leave with a much smaller, much more expensive contract than they intended. You have not defeated them in battle, but you have outflanked them in the marketplace. The chocolate cartel was their dream, but you ensured it remained a dream. The steady flow of cocoa beans continues, but now it flows on your terms, filling your reservoirs and your treasury, securing the peaceful reign you have worked so hard to build. The sweet taste of victory, you discover, is best enjoyed as a frothy, spiced chocolate drink. The wealth from the cocoa trade brings a new kind of confidence to 9 Ajaw, a stability that allows your gaze to drift from the earthly concerns of tribute and trade to the heavens themselves. The sky has always been the other great text of your world, a sprawling, star-strewn codex that the priests read with the same intensity your scribes read bark paper books. Balaam and his acolytes in the Temple of the Night Sun are the official interpreters, their predictions governing the timing of your ceremonies, your wars, your very life. Their primary tool is a simple, elegant observatory, a tall, narrow building with a series of doorways and windows aligned to mark the solstices and the path of Venus as the morning and evening star. Their predictions are reliable, orthodox, and, you begin to suspect, increasingly stagnant. Your curiosity is piqued by a young, lesser priest named Ajaw. He is not of the inner circle. He is a keeper of the obscure, a collector of celestial anomalies that don't fit the tidy priestly models. He is the one who first points out to you, on a clear, cool night atop the main pyramid, that the priest's calendar, for all its precision, has a tiny, accumulating error in its prediction of lunar eclipses. They are reading the same page of the codex over and over. "Lord," he whispers, his voice fervent with a heretic's passion. They are not turning to the next one. Inspired, you decide to sponsor a new project, one that exists outside Balaam's direct control. You commission the construction of a new, smaller observatory on a quiet hill at the city's edge, far from the ceremonial center. This one, which the workers come to call the Star-Roofed Observatory, is different. Its design is based on Ajaw's ideas. Instead of a few specific alignments, it has a roof made of a lightweight wooden lattice, open to vast swathes of the sky. It is a place not for confirming known events, but for discovering new ones. You give Ajaw a small team of sharp-eyed junior scribes and tell him to watch everything. Record the paths of the wandering stars, what others call planets. Track the dim, fuzzy stars that move against the fixed backdrop of the constellations. Note anything that changes. 4 moons, there is nothing but meticulous, boring record-keeping. Balaam hears of your little project and treats it with polite, paternalistic disdain. Then, Ajaw makes a discovery. He tracks the path of the Red Wanderer, Mars, and notes that its loop against the stars is not perfectly repeating. He begins to develop a more complex model for its motion, one that requires a new kind of mathematics, a more intricate geometry. This is the challenge to priestly dogma. The orthodox view, championed by Balaam, is that the heavens are a perfect, cyclical machine, a direct expression of the God's will. Ajaw's observations suggest imperfections, nuances, a universe that is not just a clockwork but a living, breathing, slightly messy creation. The mainstream historical fact is the Mayas' extraordinary astronomical proficiency, particularly their precise calculations of the Venusian cycle and solar years, which were deeply integrated with their religion and cosmology. The tension comes to a head during a council meeting called to discuss the upcoming K8 ending ceremony. Balaam, using his star readings, declares that the gods demand a particularly lavish celebration, including the sacrifice of 4 highborn captives. Ajaw, who you have quietly invited to attend, speaks up. Based on his own observations of a confluence of Jupiter and Saturn, he argues that the celestial portents suggest a different, more contemplative ceremony, one focused on renewal rather than bloodshed. The stars are not just shouting the same old demands, he says, his voice trembling slightly but his gaze steady. They are whispering new possibilities. The room freezes. A junior priest contradicting the high priest is unheard of. Balaam's face is a mask of cold fury. He accuses Ajaw of arrogance, of seeing patterns in the chaos where there are none. His belief that certain rare, slow-moving star clouds, what we might call nebulae, were not celestial objects at all, but rather holes in the fabric of the night sky, glimpses into the brilliant, chaotic energy of the otherworld beyond. It is a fringe, poetic, and utterly unprovable idea, but it captures the spirit of his endeavor, to look beyond the known. Historians still argue whether there was significant conflict between different astronomical schools of thought within Maya society or if a single, orthodox tradition dominated. In your throne room, the conflict is very real. You are the arbiter. You look from Balaam's rigid certainty to Ajaw's nervous ambition. You think of the honey, the whispering walls, the crocodiles. Your entire reign has been built on looking beyond the orthodox. You do not dismiss Balaam, his authority is essential for the city's spiritual stability. But you do not silence Ajaw either. The sky is vast enough for more than one set of eyes, you decree. The high priest will conduct the Kayatan ending ceremony as he sees fit. And the keeper of the star-roofed observatory will continue his watch. It is a compromise, but a telling one. You have legitimized the question. You have sanctioned the whisper against the shout. The stars, you suspect, have more to say than your priests have yet learned to hear. The celestial whispers from the star-roofed observatory are soon drowned out by a much more immediate and terrestrial silence, the silence of a sky that refuses to rain. It begins subtly, a delay in the spring showers. Then the delay stretches into an absence. The drought year descends upon 9 Mutal Ajaw not with drama, but with a slow, grinding inevitability. The air becomes a dry, hot weight. The vibrant green of the jungle fades to a dusty, tired olive. The reservoir you built, once a testament to your foresight, begins to show a widening collar of cracked, pale mud around its shrinking perimeter. The scent of dust and desperation replaces the usual fragrances of blossom and earth. This is the test you have always feared. The honey burning was a single, miraculous event. This is a protracted siege by the sun. The faith your people have in you, forged over years of fair rule and clever innovations, is now stretched thin as parchment held over a flame. You can see it in their eyes when you walk through the market, a flicker of hope quickly extinguished by the relentless glare from above. The priests, led by Balaam, are in a constant state of ritual. The air is thick, day and night, with the smoke of burning copal and, increasingly, the coppery tang of blood offerings. They are pulling out all the stops, performing the most ancient and severe ceremonies, spilling their own blood in great quantities. But the chalk remains silent. The gods, it seems, are on strike. Panic is a vine that begins to creep through the city. The codex of complaints fills not with grievances about corrupt officials, but with desperate pleas for food, for water, for divine intervention. Carwill presents you with grim accounts. The grain reserves are dwindling, and the price of maize has tripled. Chak-Ek suggests a radical, terrible solution, a raid on a weaker neighbor. Not for conquest, but for capture. The priests need high-status captives for a sacrifice on a scale the city hasn't seen in generations. It is what the gods demand. Balaam insists, his face gaunt from fasting and bloodletting. They have turned their faces from us. We must offer them something magnificent to make them look back. You are torn in a way you have never been. The pragmatic part of you, the ruler, knows that a dramatic, bloody spectacle might be the only thing that can hold the city together, that can reignite the people's faith. It is the traditional solution, the time-honored response to cosmic displeasure. But the other part of you, the part that listened to the honeykeeper and built whispering walls, rebels against it. It feels like a betrayal of everything your reign has stood for. You remember the quiet connection at the cenote, the hummingbird. Was that a god who demanded rivers of blood? 9 Sak beyond finds you staring into the diminished waters of the reservoir, your mind a battlefield. She doesn't offer advice. Instead, she tells you what she has seen. She has been visiting the outlying farms with a small guard, distributing what little water and grain the palace can spare. They are not asking for a sacrifice, my lord, she says softly. They are asking for a plan. They are digging their wells deeper. They are collecting the morning dew on leaves. They are trying. They need to see you trying, too. Her words are a lifeline. You reject Chak-Ek's plan for a raid. The decision sends a shockwave through the council. You are risking everything, your authority, the city's stability, your very life. Instead, you enact a series of drastic, practical measures. You nationalize all remaining grain and water, placing it under Carwill's meticulous control for rationing. You mobilize every able-bodied person, noble and commoner alike, to deepen the reservoir and dig new, deeper wells. You send envoys to every ally and even former rivals, not with threats, but with offers of future cocoa, jade, and military support in exchange for emergency grain. The mainstream historical fact is the devastating impact of prolonged drought on Maya city-states, which is now believed by many scholars to be a primary driver of their eventual collapse. You are fighting against a force that will, in centuries to come, defeat kings far greater than you. The desperate practice of listening for the water snake. In the deepest, stillest part of the night, certain individuals would press their ear to the ground at the bottom of a dry cenote, believing they could hear the movement of the mythical water serpent Sukan far below, and thus know where to dig. It was a superstition, but in this drought year, you authorized the effort. Historians still argue whether the Maya response to drought was primarily ritualistic or involved significant practical adaptation. In 9 Mutal Ajaw, under your rule, it is both, but with the balance shifted decisively towards the practical. The days turn into moons. The rationing is harsh. People grow thin. Tempers fray. But there is no revolt. Because you are there, in the trenches with them, your own robes stained with mud, your own hands blistered from the digging tools. You are not a distant god-king pleading with distant gods. You are a man fighting for his people's survival with every tool at his disposal. The faith they place in you is no longer the faith one has in a miracle worker, but the grittier, more durable faith one has in a leader who does not flinch. The rain does not come. But the city, against all odds, holds. The hold weakens at the edges. As the drought year grinds on, your envoys return from neighboring cities with hollow eyes and empty hands. The drought is widespread, a blanket of thirst smothering the region. Alliances, you discover, are fair-weather constructions. The promises of jade and future military support mean nothing in the face of a barren granary. It is a lesson in the fragility of power, taught not by a rival army, but by a crack in the earth. Just when the situation feels most desperate, a different kind of envoy arrives, one you never expected to see again. They come from Khan, the city where you won your famous ball game victory a lifetime ago. But these are not the proud, arrogant nobles you remember. This delegation is small, somber, and led by an old, tired-looking man who introduces himself as the brother of the current Ajaw of Khan. Their city, he explains with a voice stripped of all pride, has fallen. Not to an enemy's spear, but to the drought. Their reservoirs are dust. Their crops are dead. Their people have scattered into the jungle, seeking sustenance wherever it can be found. The ruling family and a handful of followers are all that remain, clinging to the stone shell of their once great city. Khan is a ghost city, and its rulers are now refugees begging at your gate. The council's reaction is immediate and predictable. Chakek sees an opportunity. Let them in, he says, a grim smile on his face. As hostages. We can parade them, the fallen lords of Khan, before our people. It will be a show of strength. It will prove that even in our hardship, we are still mighty. Karwil, ever the pragmatist, sees only mouths to feed. We have barely enough for our own, he counters. To take them in is to weaken ourselves for no gain. Send them away. Let the jungle have them. You look at the envoy from Khan, at the dust caked on his sandals, the hollows in his cheeks. You remember the vibrant, noisy ball court, the sting of their arrogance, and the sweet taste of your victory. That victory now feels like a trivial game from a lost, golden age. This is not about strength or pragmatism anymore. It is about the fundamental nature of your reign. You have built a city on principles of listening, of fairness, of finding a better way. To turn these people away, to use their desperation as a political prop, would unravel it all. You receive the Ghost City delegation not in the Grand Throne Room, but in the same lesser courtyard where you hear complaints, a space now haunted by the city's collective anxiety. You offer them water, precious, rationed water, and flatbread made from the last of the stored maize. The gesture is not lost on them. The old man drinks slowly, reverently. You have your own troubles, he says, his eyes taking in the subdued atmosphere of your city. Troubles are the common enemy now, you reply. The old rivalries, they are a luxury the sun has burned away. What follows is a tense, delicate negotiation, a dance on a knife's edge. You cannot simply adopt Khan. Your people would not stand for it. But you cannot turn them away. Sak Bayan, who sits by your side, proposes the solution. It will not be a surrender or a conquest. It will be a merger. The remaining people of Khan, those who can be found, will be allowed to settle in a designated, unused quarter of 9 neutral Ajaw. They will be subject to your laws and your rationing system. In return, they will contribute their skills. Their master stoneworkers will help deepen the reservoir. Their surviving warriors will bolster the city guard. Their noble lineage will be respected, but subsumed into your own. Their Ajaw will become a governor, answerable to you. The mainstream historical fact is the constant, fluid rise and fall of Maya city-states, with populations often shifting and merging in response to environmental and political pressures, a process known as synoikism. It is a bitter pill for the envoy to swallow, but the alternative is extinction. The refugees from Khan brought with them the sacred effigies of their patron gods, carefully wrapped in deerskin. They had been afraid you would demand them as trophies, but you instead grant them a small, simple shrine, allowing them to maintain their own spiritual identity within your city. Historians still argue whether such peaceful absorptions of a rival polity's entire population were common or if conflict and dispersal were the more likely outcomes. You broker a peace not with a rival, but with a ghost, offering it a shell of a body in your own city. The agreement is struck. When the people of Khan begin to trickle in, a ragged, desperate procession, your own people watch in sullen silence. There is no celebration. But there is no violence either. It is a grim, practical necessity, a pact forged in the crucible of shared suffering. You have navigated the most delicate piece of your reign, and in doing so, you have not just saved a people, you have saved the soul of your own city, proving that its strength lies not in who it can defeat, but in who it is willing to save. The absorption of Khan's survivors is a slow, gritty process, like mixing 2 different types of clay and hoping the resulting pottery won't crack in the kiln. The new arrivals keep to their designated quarter, their presence a constant, silent reminder of the world's fragility. Your own people, though accepting the necessity, view them with a wary distance. The shared hardship of the drought has created a bond of sorts, but it is a thin, brittle one. It is in this atmosphere of fragile unity that the silent rebellion begins, and its general is the last person you expected, your own son, Balaam. He is 14 reigns old, the age you were when you were thrust onto the throne. He has your thoughtful eyes and his mother's sharp mind, and he has grown up in the shadow of your innovations. He has known nothing but the codex of complaints, the whispering walls, the negotiated peace with Khan. To him, these are not revolutionary acts, they are the mundane furniture of his world. And he has started to question the foundations upon which that furniture rests. It begins with small things. During his lessons with the priests, he challenges the need for the more extreme bloodletting rituals. If the Lord Ajaw could bring rain with honey, he asks Balaam, his voice clear and confident, why must we still offer so much blood? Is the divine debt truly so vast? The old priest, who has come to respect your unorthodox methods, is nonetheless flummoxed by being questioned by a child. The questions continue. He sits in on your meetings with Carwill and asks why the noble families are exempt from the most labor-intensive communal projects, like the well digging. If the drought is everyone's problem, he states, not with anger, but with a cool, analytical logic that reminds you of nine sak bayan, then shouldn't everyone's hands be equally dirty? This is not the loud, dramatic rebellion of a son seeking his father's throne. It is a quiet, insidious questioning of the very system you have worked your entire life to humanize, but ultimately, to preserve. You have sanded the rough edges off of kingship, but he is asking why the institution of kingship itself must exist in its current, hierarchical form. He sees the absorption of Khan not as a magnanimous act, but as a pragmatic expansion of the same system of control, just under a kinder banner. One evening, after a long day settling a dispute between an original citizen and a newcomer from Khan over access to a particular well, he confronts you directly. You listen to everyone's complaints, he says, his gaze steady. But you still make the final judgment. You are still the single point of failure. What if you are wrong? What if the system itself is wrong? The question hangs in the air between you, more devastating than any accusation. The mainstream historical fact is the rigid, hierarchical structure of Maya society, with the divine Ajaw at its apex, a system that remained largely unchanged for centuries despite internal reforms. Your son is not proposing a reform, he is questioning the apex itself. You think of all you have built, the peace, the stability, the prosperity you fought for. You look at your son, this product of your enlightened reign, and you see that he has absorbed its best principles, justice, equity, reason, and is now turning them against the throne you sit on. Balaam has been secretly studying the governmental structure of a distant, lesser-known city-state that was said to be ruled by a council of elders with no single king, a historical footnote you had dismissed as a myth. You could silence him. You could remind him of his place, of the divine blood that runs in his veins, of the chaos that would follow if the people lost their central figurehead. But you remember being 12 reigns old, standing before the council of skeptics, and the power of asking a simple, disruptive question. Historians still argue whether there were any significant internal philosophical challenges to the institution of Maya kingship, or if dissent was always expressed through external warfare or coup. In your palace, the dissent is sitting across from you, drinking cocoa, and it has your eyes. You do not give him an answer. Instead, you say, a system is just a tool. It is the hand that wields it that defines its purpose. My hand has tried to be just. Perhaps your hand will build a better tool. It is not a surrender, but an acknowledgement. The silent rebellion will not be put down by decree, because it is a rebellion of ideas, and you, of all people, cannot bring yourself to declare war on an idea. You have spent a lifetime proving that a different way is possible. You just never imagined that your most formidable successor would be the one to prove you hadn't gone far enough. The drought breaks, as all things must. It does not end with a single, dramatic storm, but with a series of gentle, persistent rains that slowly coax the land back to life. The relief is palpable, a collective exhalation held for nearly 2 years. The green returns, the reservoirs fill, and the rhythm of planting and harvest resumes its ancient beat. The city, tempered in the crucible of hardship, emerges stronger, its population swelled by the people of Khan, its social fabric rewoven into a new, more complex pattern. Your son, Balaam, continues his quiet questioning, but it has evolved from rebellion into a thoughtful, if relentless, dialogue. He is sharpening his mind against the whetstone of your reign, and you let him, recognizing that this is the final, most important education you can provide. As the Kayatans turn, you feel a subtle shift within yourself. The frantic energy of mid-reign has mellowed into a steady, contemplative pace. You have overseen the construction of the final additions to the reservoir system. You have mediated the last major land dispute between the old families and the new. You have even seen your first grandchild, a bright-eyed girl who shows an alarming early interest in pulling the feathers from your headdress. Your work, you feel, is largely done. And it is with this profound sense of completion that you make the most deliberate, and perhaps strangest, decision of your life. You call the master sculptor, the same Armak who once built your whispering walls, to a private audience. You stand with him in a secluded courtyard, the morning sun dappling through the canopy. I have a final commission for you, you tell him. A stela. It is to be placed in the new plaza, near the quarter where the people of Khan now live. Armak nods, already mentally sketching the proportions. And what shall it depict, Lord? Your victory over the drought? The unification of the peoples? The ball game at Khan. He is already envisioning a grand narrative, a culmination of your life's work carved in stone for eternity. You shake your head. No. It is to be unmarked. Armak blinks. Unmarked, Lord. No glyphs. No portrait. No dates. No narrative. Just a plain, finely shaped stone. The silence that follows is deeper than any you have commanded in years. An unmarked stela is an oxymoron, a contradiction in terms. Stelae are the voice of the Ajaw, the megaphone to the future, the guarantee of immortality. They are how a ruler shouts his name across the centuries. To erect a blank one is not just modesty, it is a conscious act of self-erasure. The mainstream historical fact is the central role of these carved stone monuments in proclaiming a ruler's power, lineage, and military and religious achievements. They are the primary source for much of what we know about Maya kings. Armak is bewildered. But history will not know you. They will dig it up one day and they will have no record of your peace, of all you have done. Precisely, you say, a calm smile touching your lips. Let them find the reservoir. Let them find the whispering walls in the scribe's quarter. Let them find the expanded city, the merged neighborhoods. Let them dig up the codex of complaints, if it survives. Let the evidence of a life well lived be the life itself, not a boast about it carved in stone. You are thinking of the endless rows of stelae in other cities, each Ajaw trying to outshout his predecessor, their wars and captives and bloodlettings echoing into an empty future. Your legacy is not in the grand gesture, but in the quiet hum of a functioning, peaceful city. Your belief is that a blank stone absorbs the stories of the people who live around it, becoming a vessel for their collective memory, rather than a monument to a single ego. Historians still argue whether the gaps in the archaeological record, the cities that seem to have peaceful, dark periods with few carved monuments, represent times of poverty, societal shift, or a conscious philosophical choice by their rulers. You are making that choice. Armak, slowly understanding, finally nods. He will craft the most perfect, elegant, and utterly blank stone shaft the city has ever seen. When it is erected, the people are confused. They touch its smooth surface, puzzled. But in time, children lean against it while their mothers talk. Lovers meet beside it in the evening. Old men from Khan sit in its shade and tell stories of their old home. It becomes a part of the city's living fabric, not its frozen history. You have made a contract with oblivion, choosing to be forgotten by name so that the substance of your reign, the peace, the practicality, the people, might speak for itself. It is the ultimate act of faith in what you have built, a final, quiet release of the ego that has guided you for so long. The stone stands, silent and profound, a testament not to a king, but to a kingdom. You feel it first in the cool of the evening, a gentle loosening, like a rope that has held a boat fast to the dock for a long, long time is finally being slipped. There is no pain, only a profound and spreading warmth that starts in your core and radiates outwards, softening the edges of the world. The last sunset is not an ending you fear. It is a destination you have been walking towards for many Kayatans, and now you have arrived. You are in your favorite courtyard, the one with the view of the unmarked stela, its plain surface now glowing a soft orange in the light of the dipping sun. The scents of the city wash over you one final time. The earthy smell of rain on hot plaster, the distant, sweet smoke from a cooking fire, the faint, floral perfume of the night-blooming cereus that 9 sac beyond planted so many years ago. Your mind, usually a busy council chamber of thoughts and memories, grows quiet. The individual voice is still, blending into a single, harmonious hum. You see the faces of your life not as a procession, but as a constellation, all present at once. Your father's strong grip at the cenote, the skeptical eyes of the council, the fierce intelligence in 9 sac beyond's gaze the first time you met, the determined set of Balaam's jaw as he questioned your every decree, the weary gratitude of the envoy from Khan. You see the golden flare of the Hunnifier and feel the first, fat drop of rain on your forehead. You hear the satisfying thud of the rubber ball through the stone ring and the miraculous quiet of the first whispering wall. You feel the gritty texture of the drought-year dust and the cool, life-giving water of the first full reservoir after the rains returned. These are the monuments. Not the carved stones, but these moments of connection, of struggle, of quiet triumph. A reign defined by peace is not a reign without conflict. It is a reign where conflict was resolved with wisdom instead of force, with inclusion instead of exclusion. You think of the hummingbird, that first messenger, and you understand now that its message was not about power, but about perspective, about the ability to find a point of perfect, suspended balance amidst the terrifying and beautiful chaos of existence. You held that balance for your people, for a little while. And now, it is time to let go. The sun slips below the horizon, and the world is bathed in a deep, tranquil blue. The sounds of the city begin to soften, layering into a gentle lullaby, the chirping of crickets, the murmur of distant conversation, the soft clatter of a pot being put away. You feel 9 sac beyond's hand find yours, her touch as familiar and comforting as your own heartbeat. You do not have the strength to squeeze back, but she knows you feel it. You see Balaam standing nearby, his expression no longer one of rebellion, but of a deep, quiet understanding. The student has surpassed the teacher, and the teacher could not be more proud. Your work is done. The city is whole. It is safe. It is home. You take one last, slow breath, filling your lungs with the fragrant evening air, and then you release it, letting it go, letting everything go, as the last light fades from the stone and the first stars begin to pepper the velvet sky, and the gentle, endless night finally, peacefully, welcomes you in. The story of the Ajaw who sought no glory but found it in the well-being of his people is over. The unmarked stela stands, a silent sentinel in a thriving city, its blank face holding more truth than 1,000 carved boasts. The reservoirs are full, the fields are green, and the children of old rivals play together in the lengthening shadows. There is no grand finale, no dramatic conclusion, only the quiet, persistent hum of life continuing, of a peace that has become ordinary, which is the most extraordinary achievement of all. The memory of his name may fade, as all names eventually do, but the shape of his kindness is carved into the very streets and the hearts of his people, a legacy written not in stone, but in the simple, profound act of living well, together. So let the silence of his monument be a comfort, a reminder that the most important histories are often the ones felt, not read. Now, rest. Let the images of a peaceful city and a setting sun carry you into your own dreams, where the burdens are light and the night is always gentle.